Hi, I'm Greg. Welcome to How to Fix It Workshop. Have you ever wanted to have beer right on tap? Well, now I'll show you how to turn an ordinary chest freezer into a keezer. And then you could have your own beer from the tap. We'll be building a collar to extend the height of the freezer. So measure the length and width of the top opening of the freezer. I use 2x6s for my collar. However, you can use 2x4s or go even bigger with 2x8s or even 2x10s. It's all personal preference. Remember when measuring this, you're making basically like a box. The collar, you'll have to subtract 3 inches from the length of the right and left sides of the keezer. We do this because when we screw the sides together, it adds 1.5 inches on both sides from the boards on the front and back. Once the corners are squared up, drill pilot holes and screw them together. There we go. Now, once the collar is all together, start sanding it down. Sanding it real well for staining. Now I'm going to drill 2 holes for taps. I'm just going to put 2 right now. And I'm going to put them to the right and center, about 4 inches apart. That way, when I add more taps later, I can just add it to the left. I also added a hole on the side of the collar as well for the air hose for the CO2 tank, because I'm putting my CO2 tank on the outside, but you can have it on the inside or outside of the keezer. I just figured it would leave more room on the inside of the keezer. Okay, so when I stained, I hung the collar outside on a couple of ropes, and I chose a darker color and use a towel to apply the stain. After you're done, let the stain dry for about a day. Next, we're going to remove the lid of the freezer. Most chest freezers are all the same. Mine has little plastic covers over the hinges and 4 screws to remove. But be careful when you remove these screws. Some have a lot of tension on the hinges and it may spring up in your face. Mine didn't seem to have that, but some of these may. Once you have all the screws removed, you can take the lid right off the freezer. I used a clear waterproof silicone on the top of the freezer to attach the collar. Now you can place a collar on top of all that silicone that you just made and make sure it's in the right position. You don't want it to be upside down or anything. Make sure it's in line and use like your finger to make like a line around, to make a perfect line around the seam between the freezer and the collar. So now you want to place the lid on top, but you don't want to attach it yet. Put something heavy on top to hold it down and let it dry overnight. I just put a couple of storage totes on top and just let that sit overnight for it to dry. Next day, when the silicone is dry, you're going to want to attach the lid to the collar. So go ahead and screw that on using the holes that are on there. Once it's in place, make sure the lid is closing properly and it seals properly. And then put your covers, attach the hinge covers. Now hooking up the CO2, you want to run your air hose through the hole in the collar and attach it right to the tank. And as I said, you could put the tank on the inside of the Keezer as well, but I chose on the outside. Now mount your CO2 distributor to the inside of the collar. I put mine on the left side near the tank. You can put yours on the back or wherever you'd like. It's all personal preference. Little trick when you connect the air hose or any tight hoses, dip them in hot water for about a minute and it'll make the hoses more pliable and they'll be able to hook to the connectors a lot easier. Next, I connected the tap shanks to the holes here, to the two holes in front, and just tighten them up. And you go ahead and connect the taps with the handles. Now you connect your beer lines to the taps. And as I said, the same thing. My beer lines are smaller than my air lines, so I have to use the hot water method to make them more pliable, but it works really well. Okay, now you want to connect all your air hoses. I just have three. This is just a three-way distributor. Um, I'll need to get a bigger one if I add more taps, but connect all the air hoses of that. Now all my hoses have ball lock connectors on the ends since I use the corny kegs. Go ahead and I'm just going to use one keg. Connect the air line to the in on the keg and connect the beer line to the out on the keg. Turn the air line on using the air in the on position on the distributor and set your CO2 to the serving pressure. So in order for your Keezer not to freeze, you'll need a temperature control. With this device, you plug it into the wall and plug the freezer into the temperature control. You set the temperature you want. I set mine to 40 degrees, and temperature probe goes inside the Keezer. It'll turn the freezer off and on and keep the temperature set to the proper temperature. Now you're all ready to have your own beer from the tap. Enjoy.